Funny, isn't it? Everyone in this room wants to shake my father's hand, but nobody wants to hold mine. 8-year-old Noah Cross said it so quietly that almost no one heard him, and maybe that was the problem. The Grand Meridian Ballroom glittered beneath crystal chandeliers, packed with politicians, executives, donors, and people wealthy enough to have their names engraved on hospital wings. At the center of it all stood Damien Cross, a tall alpha in a perfectly tailored black suit, accepting handshakes with the calm authority of a man everyone knew before meeting. Some called him a businessman. Others lowered their voices when they called him a mafia boss. Tonight, however, Damien was simply Noah's father. His son sat less than 30 feet away beside a marble column, small hands resting carefully on his knees, while strangers passed him as though the chair were empty. Noah had been blind since early childhood, but blindness had never made him helpless. What made him withdraw was the way adults changed around him. Some spoke too loudly. Some offered pity he had never requested. Most simply avoided him because they were afraid of saying the wrong thing. Damien noticed every one of them. He noticed everything where Noah was concerned, yet tonight powerful donors kept surrounding him, and each conversation pulled his attention away for another minute. Noah listened instead. Shoes crossed polished marble. Glasses chimed. A jazz quartet played somewhere to his left. Then the crowd shifted unexpectedly, chairs scraping as guests moved toward the stage for an announcement. Noah stood, expecting to find the familiar edge of the column, but his fingertips touched empty air. Someone brushed past him without stopping. Another person murmured an apology and disappeared. Noah froze. The ballroom suddenly seemed 10 times larger. "Dad?" he called, but applause swallowed the word. Across the room, Damien turned sharply, already searching. Before he could move, someone else noticed. Ethan Parker was carrying a tray of sparkling water toward the service station when he saw the boy standing perfectly still while the crowd flowed around him. Ethan set the tray down immediately. He didn't grab Noah's shoulder. He didn't announce that the child needed help. He simply approached until he was close enough to be heard and stopped. "Hey," Ethan said gently. "My name's Ethan. I'm standing a couple feet in front of you." Noah tilted his head toward the unfamiliar voice. "I lost the column." "Yeah, the crowd moved you a little farther than you probably realized." Ethan glanced toward the people rushing around them. "Would it help if I held your hand until we find whoever you came with?" Noah hesitated. Damien had already started across the ballroom when he saw something that stopped him cold. His son slowly lifted one hand. "Yes," Noah whispered. Ethan took it carefully, without pulling, letting Noah decide how firmly to hold on. "Okay, you lead the speed, I'll handle the traffic." For the first time that evening, Noah smiled. Damien stared at the young Omega holding his son's hand as if the crowded ballroom had suddenly emptied around them. Noah did not hold strangers' hands. Not anymore. Daniel Reed, Damien's longtime right-hand man, appeared beside him. "Boss." Damien's eyes never left Ethan. "Find out who he is." Noah did not release Ethan's hand when they reached the marble column. That was the first thing Damien noticed. The second was that Ethan seemed completely unaware of the attention gathering around him. He was not staring at Damien's expensive suit or the security detail positioned discreetly around the ballroom. His attention remained on Noah. "We found your column," Ethan said. Noah reached out with his free hand until his fingertips touched the cool marble. "I know." "How?" Ethan asked. "There is an air vent above it. I can hear it." Ethan looked up and smiled. "You are better at this than I am." Noah laughed softly, and Damien stopped several feet away. He could not remember the last time his son had laughed with someone he had just met. Daniel returned quietly to Damien's side. "His name is Ethan Parker, 24 years old. Omega. He works for the catering company handling tonight's event." Damien glanced at him. "That is all. That is what I could confirm without making anyone nervous." "And does he know who Noah is?" "Apparently not." That interested Damien more than anything else. Nearly everyone in the ballroom recognized the Cross name. People approached Damien because they wanted donations, introductions, contracts, or favors. Even kindness toward Noah often changed the moment someone discovered who his father was. Ethan's kindness had come first. Damien walked forward. Ethan heard his footsteps and finally looked up. The change in his expression was immediate. Recognition arrived, followed by uncertainty. Noah noticed the silence. "Dad." Damien's stern expression softened. "I am here." Noah released Ethan and reached toward his father's voice. Damien took his hand. Ethan helped me find the column. I saw. Ethan straightened. Mr. Cross, I apologize if I crossed a boundary. He seemed disoriented, and I thought he might need help. Damien studied him. Most people filled silence around him with nervous explanations. Ethan simply waited. You asked him first, Damien said. Ethan looked confused. Before touching him. Of course. Damien glanced down at Noah. Such a simple courtesy, yet too many people forgot it. They grabbed Noah's arm, moved objects without warning, or spoke to Damien as though Noah were not standing beside him. Thank you, Damien said. Ethan blinked, clearly surprised. You are welcome. A supervisor near the service station waved urgently for Ethan to return. Ethan looked toward the movement. I should get back to work. Noah's fingers tightened around Damien's hand. Will Ethan still be here later? Ethan paused. Until the event ends. Good. That single word carried more certainty than Damien had heard from his son all evening. Ethan smiled at Noah before returning to the service station. Damien watched him disappear into the crowd. 10 minutes later, the charity presentation began, but Noah barely listened. Dad, he whispered. Yes. Can Ethan come sit with me when he gets a break? Damien looked across the ballroom. Ethan was pouring water for a table of guests, still unaware that one of the most powerful men in the city was studying him with a question money could not answer. Why had Noah trusted him? Damien leaned toward Daniel. Do not investigate him any further. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Then what do you want me to do? Damien watched Ethan kneel beside an elderly guest to retrieve a dropped napkin, speaking to her with the same easy patience he had shown Noah. Nothing, Damien said. I want to see what he does when he thinks nobody important is watching. Noah waited exactly 12 minutes before asking again. Is Ethan on his break yet? Damien checked his watch, although he had no idea when the catering staff took breaks. Not yet. Noah leaned back in his chair and listened to the charity presentation, but Damien could tell his attention was elsewhere. Years earlier, Noah would have filled moments like this with questions. He had once been endlessly curious about everything around him. He wanted to know why elevators hummed, how rain knew where to fall, why coffee smelled better than it tasted, and whether the moon looked different from different cities. Then, gradually, the questions had stopped. Damien had hired specialists, teachers, mobility instructors, and every professional recommended to him. They had helped Noah become more independent, but none of them could fix what Damien privately believed was the deeper problem. Noah had learned that strangers often treated him differently. Some spoke to him as if he were much younger than 8. Others asked Damien questions Noah could answer himself. At school events, parents sometimes encouraged their children to give Noah space when what Noah wanted was company. Damien could purchase every resource his son needed, but he could not order another child to become a genuine friend. Worse, his reputation followed Noah everywhere. People were either frightened of the Cross family or eager to impress them. Noah noticed both. By the time the applause ended, Ethan had disappeared through a service door. Noah heard the change in the room before Damien said anything. He left, probably for his break. He said he would still be here. And he is. Noah went quiet. Damien recognized the uncertainty beneath that silence. It was the expectation that people eventually disappeared. 5 minutes later, the service door opened. Ethan returned carrying 2 paper cups. He approached slowly enough for Noah to recognize his footsteps. I have a serious question, Ethan said. Noah immediately sat straighter. What? Apple cider or hot chocolate? Noah smiled. Hot chocolate. Ethan handed Damien 1 cup. I asked the kitchen to make it warm, not hot. Damien accepted it, surprised by the thoughtfulness. Ethan pulled an empty chair nearby rather than sitting beside Noah without asking. May I? Yes, Noah said quickly. Ethan Saturday, so Mr. Human Radar. What else can you hear? Noah considered the room. The piano player keeps tapping his left foot. Ethan looked toward the stage. You are right. There is a woman behind us wearing bracelets. A faint metallic chime sounded several feet away. Ethan laughed. Also right. Noah tilted his head, listening harder. And my dad is pretending not to watch us. Ethan froze. Damien nearly smiled. Your father is very bad at pretending, Ethan said carefully. He worries. Noah said it without embarrassment or complaint. Then his voice became quieter. People worry about me a lot. Does that bother you? Ethan asked. Noah nodded. Sometimes I want them to just talk to me. Ethan was silent for a moment. Then I can do that. Noah turned toward him. You do not have to make everything easier for me. All right. And you do not have to feel sorry for me. I do not. The answer came so naturally that Noah smiled again. Damien looked away, unexpectedly affected by something so ordinary. Later that night, after the gala ended and the cross car carried them through the quiet city streets, Noah rested his head against the seat. Damien thought he had fallen asleep until his son spoke. Dad, yes. Noah hesitated. Can Ethan come back? Damien looked out at the passing lights, realizing that for the first time in months, Noah was asking for a person instead of another book, another lesson, or another quiet evening at home. I will see what I can do, Damien said. Noah smiled in the darkness. Damien, however, remained awake for the entire ride, wondering how an Omega who had entered their lives by accident had accomplished in one evening what Damien had been trying to accomplish for years. 3 days later, Ethan stood outside the iron gates of the Cross estate, wondering whether agreeing to this meeting had been a terrible mistake. The property sat nearly an hour outside the city, surrounded by acres of quiet woodland and enough security to make the elegant stone mansion feel strangely separate from the rest of the world. Daniel Reed had called Ethan the morning after the gala and explained that Damian Cross wanted to discuss a temporary position involving Noah. Ethan had nearly refused before Daniel mentioned that Noah had specifically asked to see him again. That was the only reason Ethan was now following a housekeeper through a foyer larger than his entire apartment. Damian waited in a sunlit study overlooking the gardens. Mr. Parker, he said. Ethan is fine. Damian gestured toward a chair. Ethan sat, keeping his hands folded calmly despite the intimidating surroundings. Damian placed a folder on the desk. I want to hire you. Ethan stared at him. To do what? Spend time with Noah. That sounds less like a job description and more like something you decided 5 minutes ago. For perhaps the first time in years, someone had spoken to Damian Cross without carefully measuring every word. Instead of becoming offended, Damian leaned back. Noah has mobility instructors, teachers, and specialists. I am not asking you to replace any of them. I am asking you to provide companionship. He opened the folder and turned it around. Ethan looked at the proposed weekly payment, then looked again because he assumed he had misread the number. This is too much. It is appropriate. For drinking hot chocolate with an 8-year-old? For your time. Ethan closed the folder. No, Damian's expression changed slightly. No. If Noah needs another employee, you can hire someone qualified. If he wants a friend, you cannot put that on payroll. The room became very quiet. Damian was accustomed to negotiations where every person eventually revealed a price. Ethan had just pushed the folder back across the desk. Then why did you come? Damian asked. Because Noah asked for me. Before Damian could answer, footsteps sounded in the hallway. Ethan heard them approaching, light and careful. Noah entered with one hand following the wall. Ethan. Ethan turned immediately. How did you know it was me? Noah smiled. Your shoes. Ethan glanced down at his sneakers. What is wrong with my shoes? They squeak. Damian covered the beginning of a smile with his hand. Noah crossed the room confidently, counting the final steps from the doorway. Ethan started to rise, but stopped himself from reaching out. Noah found the chair beside him, and Saturday, are you staying? The question was simple, but something in Noah's voice made Ethan look at Damian. Your dad and I were discussing that. Noah frowned. That means no. It means your father tried to turn hanging out with you into a business contract. Damian lifted an eyebrow. Noah burst into laughter. Dad does that with everything. Apparently. Damian looked from his son to Ethan and realized he had approached the entire situation incorrectly. He closed the folder and moved it aside. Fine. No contract. Ethan studied him. No enormous paycheck. Damian sighed. You are making this unnecessarily difficult. I think I am making it normal. Noah reached toward Ethan's voice until his hand found Ethan's. Can you stay for lunch? Ethan looked down at the small hand resting comfortably in his own. Lunch I can do. Noah smiled. Damian watched them, then glanced at the untouched contract on his desk. For the first time in a very long time, Damian Cross had encountered something his money could not purchase, and instead of frustrating him, the realization felt strangely like relief. Lunch became an afternoon, and the afternoon became the beginning of a routine nobody in the Cross house had expected. Ethan returned 2 days later, then again that Saturday, always because Noah asked and never because Damien offered money. Within 3 weeks, the mansion sounded different. Before Ethan, Noah spent most afternoons in the library listening to audiobooks or completing carefully structured lessons. Ethan did not remove those routines. He simply added life between them. He brought a small portable speaker into the garden and challenged Noah to identify sounds from different directions. He filled jars with coffee beans, dried orange peel, cinnamon sticks, and pine needles and turned scent into a guessing game. In the kitchen, he taught Noah how to measure flour by touch while the housekeeper watched with nervous disbelief. 1 cup, Ethan said. Noah carefully leveled the measuring cup with his finger. That is 1 cup. You spilled some. Then the counter gets a snack. Noah laughed so loudly that Damien heard him from his office down the hall. He stopped halfway through a phone conversation. Daniel, standing across the desk, noticed immediately. Boss. Damien raised one finger. The laughter came again. Warm, uncontrolled, unmistakably Noah. Damien looked toward the doorway. Continue, he told Daniel, but his attention never fully returned to business. A week later, Ethan found Damien standing at the edge of the garden while Noah searched for wind chimes they had hung from 3 low tree branches. You know you can join us, Ethan said. Damien adjusted his cuffs. I am observing. That sounds like something people say when they are afraid of losing. Noah turned toward them. Dad, come here. Damien sighed and crossed the lawn. Ethan handed him a small brass bell. Hide this somewhere within 20 feet. Damien looked at the bell as if Ethan had handed him an unfamiliar piece of machinery. That is the game. That is the game. There are no rules. Try not to hide it on the roof. Noah laughed. Damien walked several yards away and placed the bell beside a stone planter. Noah listened while Ethan shook another bell from the opposite direction. He turned the wrong way first, corrected himself, then followed the sound until his fingers found the planter. Got it. Damien smiled before he could stop himself. Ethan saw it, but said nothing. That silence mattered. Most people reacted whenever Damien showed softness, as though they had witnessed something rare. Ethan simply treated it as normal. Later, the 3 sat beneath an old maple tree while Noah described which sounds belonged to which parts of the garden. A breeze moved through the leaves overhead. There is the fountain, Noah said, pointing correctly. And the kitchen door is behind Ethan. Correct, Ethan said. Dad is on my right. Damien looked at him. How did you know? Your watch. Damien glanced at the expensive mechanical watch on his wrist. You can hear that. When everything else gets quiet. Noah reached out casually and found Ethan's hand. Then he extended his other hand toward Damien. Damien stared at it for a second before taking it. Noah sat between them, holding one hand from each man, completely unaware that both adults had suddenly gone silent. Ethan looked across at Damien. There was no fear in his expression now, only a quiet understanding neither of them knew how to name. Damien looked down at his son, then at their joined hands beneath the maple tree. For years, he had built walls around Noah, believing safety was the greatest gift he could provide. Yet somehow, an omega with squeaky shoes had walked through those walls and shown him something painfully simple. Noah had never needed a quieter world. He had needed people willing to enter it with him. The first sign that something was wrong came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, when Ethan found Noah sitting beneath the covered back porch instead of waiting in the music room. The boy was unusually quiet, listening to rain tap against the stone steps. Ethan sat several feet away. You skipped our terrible piano lesson. Noah did not smile. I do not like Tuesdays. Ethan waited. He had learned that Noah spoke when nobody rushed him. After nearly a minute, Noah asked, Do you ever think people leave because of you? The question caught Ethan off guard. Sometimes, he admitted. Why? Noah rubbed his thumb across the edge of his sleeve. People always leave this house. Ethan looked toward the tall windows behind them. Suddenly, the mansion felt different. He remembered the rotating tutors, assistants, drivers, instructors, and household employees. Damien had created a perfectly organized world around his son, but organization came with constant change. Is that why you kept asking whether I was coming back? Ethan asked. Noah nodded. If I know when people leave, it is easier. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. Noah, look toward my voice. Noah turned. I cannot promise that nothing will ever change. Nobody can promise that. But if I need to leave, I will tell you. I will not just disappear. Noah was silent before asking, Promise. Promise. Neither of them noticed Damien standing inside the doorway. He had arrived halfway through the conversation and stopped when he heard his son's question. That evening, after Noah went upstairs, Damien found Ethan in the kitchen rinsing 2 mugs. You think I caused it, Damien said. Ethan turned. Caused what? His fear of people leaving. Ethan dried his hands. I think you are asking the wrong question. Damien's expression hardened, not with anger, but defense. Then tell me the right one. Ethan hesitated. Damien Cross was a man people obeyed without argument. Ethan had seen executives lower their voices around him and employees straighten when he entered a room. But Ethan had also seen him kneel beside Noah to tie a shoelace and memorize exactly how warm his son liked hot chocolate. When was the last time you spent an entire afternoon with Noah without checking your phone? Ethan asked. Damien said nothing. Not watching from your office. Not having Daniel keep you updated. Just being there. Everything I do is for him. I know. Ethan's answer was gentle, which somehow made it harder to dismiss. You built this place to keep him safe. You found the best teachers. You gave him every resource you could find. But Noah does not need another resource. Damien looked toward the hallway. What does he need? His dad. The words landed quietly. Ethan continued. He does not need you to become stronger. He already thinks you are the strongest person in the world. He needs you to be available enough that he does not have to wonder whether you are leaving too. Damien looked down at his phone. The screen showed 17 unread messages. For years, he had believed providing security was the same as providing presence. He had never considered that Noah might understand the difference. The next afternoon, Ethan arrived expecting their usual garden game. Instead, he found Damien sitting on the floor of the music room beside Noah, his suit jacket draped over a chair and his phone nowhere in sight. Noah was teaching him a simple melody on the piano. Damien missed a note. Noah laughed. Again, Dad. Damien tried again. Ethan remained quietly in the doorway until Noah noticed his squeaky shoes. Ethan, come help. Dad is terrible. Damien looked over his shoulder. For once, there was no meeting waiting, no urgent call, no world demanding his attention. He moved slightly and made room beside them. Apparently, Damien said, I need a better teacher. Ethan crossed the room and sat down. Noah smiled between them, and Damien finally understood that protecting a home and being present inside it were 2 very different things. For the next 2 weeks, Damien kept his phone away during Noah's afternoons, and the change was so simple that Ethan almost believed the Cross house had finally found its rhythm. Then, on a Thursday morning, Ethan arrived at the estate and immediately knew something had shifted. Daniel met him in the foyer instead of Noah. Mr. Cross needs to speak with you. Damien was waiting in his study, but there was no folder on his desk this time. Someone photographed you leaving the estate yesterday, he said. Ethan frowned. All right. A local gossip site identified you by name this morning. They are asking why an Omega from a catering company has been visiting my home. Ethan stared at him. And Damien's jaw tightened. And I do not want you approached because of my family. So what are you saying? For now, you should stop coming here. The words were calm, practical, and devastatingly familiar. Ethan looked at the man who had finally learned to put his phone away for his son, and suddenly Damien sounded like the old version of himself again, solving uncertainty by controlling distance. Did Noah ask for that? Ethan asked. Noah is 8. That was not my question. Damien stood. I am trying to protect you. You are deciding for me. Silence filled the study. Ethan nodded slowly, more disappointed than angry. Tell Noah I said goodbye. Damien's expression changed. Ethan, you promised yourself you would be more present with him. Do not make me another person who disappears without an explanation. Ethan left before Damien found an answer. That afternoon, Noah waited in the music room beside the piano. At 3:15, he asked whether Ethan was late. At 3:30, he stopped practicing. At 4, Damien finally sat beside him. Ethan is not coming today. Noah turned toward his voice. Tomorrow. Damien hesitated, and Noah understood immediately. You told him not to come. I thought it was safer. Noah's face fell. For who? Damien had no answer that sounded good anymore. Did Ethan want to leave? No. Noah stood and carefully found the edge of the piano. Then you made him leave. He walked from the room without asking for help. That night, Damien passed Noah's bedroom and heard no audiobook, No music, no questions. The silence felt exactly like the silence Ethan had warned him about. Daniel found Damien downstairs 20 minutes later, standing beside the front door with his code in his hand. "I can send someone to bring Parker back," Daniel offered. Damien looked at him. A month earlier, that would have been his solution. Give an order. Arrange the outcome. Remove uncertainty. But Ethan had never asked to become part of Damien's controlled world. "No," Damien said. "I will go." Ethan lived in a modest apartment building on the west side of the city, 40 minutes from the estate. Damien drove there himself. When Ethan opened his door and found Damien Cross standing alone in the hallway, surprise crossed his face. "If you came to explain why you were right, save yourself the drive." "I was wrong." Ethan went still. Damien had negotiated with men who controlled entire companies without feeling half as uncertain as he did now. "Noah asked me whether you wanted to leave," Damien continued. "I told him no. Then he asked why I made the decision for you." Ethan folded his arms. Smart kid. Smarter than his father. That earned the smallest change in Ethan's expression. Damien looked down at his empty hands. He had brought no contract, no security team, no offer. "I spent years believing that if I controlled every risk around Noah, nothing could hurt him. I did the same thing to you today." He met Ethan's eyes. "I am not here to take you back. I am here to ask whether you will come back by choice." Ethan studied Damien for several seconds, almost expecting the familiar confidence to return and turn the apology into another carefully managed arrangement. It never did. Damien simply stood in the apartment hallway, waiting. "You really came here alone?" Ethan asked. "Yes." "Daniel did not drive you?" "No. Nobody is downstairs waiting to escort me back." Damien almost smiled. "No." Ethan leaned against the doorway. "You are getting better at this." "At what?" "Asking instead of deciding." Damien lowered his gaze for a moment. "I have had very little practice." The honesty surprised Ethan more than the apology had. For weeks, he had watched Damien become softer around Noah, but this was different. There was no child in the room to motivate him, no audience to impress, and no problem that money could solve. Damien had come because he understood that Ethan deserved a choice. "I was not angry because you wanted me safe," Ethan said. "I was angry because you treated me like safety mattered more than my opinion. I know that now. And if another photograph appears, we talk about it. If people ask questions, we talk about it." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "If you decide something is dangerous?" Damien exhaled. "We talk about it." Ethan finally smiled. That sounded painful. Extremely. The tension between them eased, but Ethan still did not move from the doorway. "There is something else," Damien said. "Noah thinks everyone eventually leaves him. I almost proved him right again. You can fix that part." "I intend to." Damien paused, then extended one hand toward Ethan. He did not step closer. He did not reach for Ethan's wrist or assume the answer. His hand simply remained between them, open and patient. Ethan looked at it and immediately remembered the gala. Noah standing lost in a crowd. Ethan offering his hand and waiting for permission. Damien had remembered too. "I am asking," Damien said quietly. "Will you come back?" Ethan looked from Damien's hand to his face. "Not because Noah needs me." Damien considered the question carefully. "Noah wants you there. There is a difference." "And you?" Damien's expression softened. "The house is quieter without you." Ethan laughed. "That is your big emotional confession." "I am still learning." Clearly. Ethan let him wait another second before placing his hand in Damien's. The gesture lasted only a moment, but Damien's shoulders relaxed as though he had been holding his breath since Ethan opened the door. "I will come back," Ethan said. "But tomorrow morning. Noah should be asleep by now." Damien checked his watch. "He is probably awake." "Why?" "Because I told him I was coming here." Ethan stared at him. "You told him the truth?" "Apparently, I am also practicing that." The next morning, Ethan's squeaky sneakers had barely crossed the Cross Estate foyer when hurried footsteps sounded from the hallway. "Ethan," Noah called. "Right here." Noah stopped several feet away, visibly trying not to rush. "Are you staying?" Ethan walked closer. "I am staying because I chose to." Noah's face brightened. He reached out, and Ethan took his hand. A moment later, Noah extended his other hand toward the hallway. "Dad." Damien had been watching from the doorway. He crossed the room and took it. Noah stood between them, smiling. "Good," he said. "Now nobody gets to make decisions without talking first." Ethan looked at Damien. I like that rule. Damien sighed. I have created a democracy in my own house. Noah laughed, and Damien joined him. Ethan realized then that the most important thing Damien had done was not bringing him back. It was learning to leave his hand open long enough for someone else to choose whether to take it. 6 months later, Damien returned to the Grand Meridian Ballroom and immediately noticed how different everything felt. The chandeliers were the same. The marble floors still reflected hundreds of expensive shoes, and influential guests still crossed the room to shake his hand. But Damien no longer allowed those conversations to determine where he stood. Noah was beside him. Ethan was there too. The charity had invited Damien back as a major donor, and this time Noah had insisted on attending. He wore a navy suit he had chosen himself and carried a slim white cane instead of keeping one hand permanently attached to his father. Ethan walked on his left, close enough to answer questions, but never close enough to take away Noah's independence. The piano player is different, Noah said. Ethan listened. How can you tell? Last year the pianist kept tapping his foot. Damien smiled. You remember that? I remember everything important. A woman approached Damien with an enthusiastic greeting, but instead of speaking around Noah, she introduced herself directly to him. Noah answered confidently. Another guest asked about the sound games he had helped organize for children at his school. Soon, Noah was explaining his favorite one with such excitement that Damien found himself standing quietly outside the conversation. Months ago, that would have made him nervous. Now it made him proud. Ethan glanced at Damien. You are staring. Observing. We established months ago that is what you say when you do not know what to do with your feelings. Damien gave him a patient look. You have become unusually comfortable criticizing me. Your son encourages it. I absolutely do, Noah said, making both men laugh. Later, the three stepped onto the same balcony where the noise of the ballroom softened behind closed doors. Cool autumn air moved across the city, carrying the distant sounds of traffic. Noah stood between them, his face turned toward the skyline he could not see but had learned to understand through sound, temperature, distance, and description. Tell me what it looks like tonight, he said. Damien began with buildings and lights. Ethan interrupted to describe the clouds as silver around the moon. Damien added the red aircraft lights blinking on distant towers. Ethan described the river reflecting the city like a long ribbon of broken glass. Noah listened, smiling. You both describe things differently. Which one is better? Ethan asked. Noah considered it. Together is better. Damien became quiet. During those 6 months, he had reduced his schedule, moved several meetings home, and learned that being Noah's father required something far more difficult than providing everything. It required showing up repeatedly, especially on ordinary days when nothing dramatic happened. Ethan had remained part of those days. He came for breakfast sometimes. He helped Noah with school projects. He argued with Damien about terrible coffee and convinced the household staff that Sunday pancakes should never become a formal meal. Somewhere along the way, Damien had stopped thinking of Ethan as the stranger who helped his son. Ethan had become someone Damien trusted, someone whose presence made the enormous house feel less like a fortress and more like a home. Noah reached out suddenly. His right hand found Damien's. His left searched the air until Ethan took it. There, Noah said. What? Damien asked. Nothing. I just wanted to make sure you were both here. Damien's throat tightened. We are. Ethan squeezed Noah's hand gently. Right here. Noah smiled toward the city sounds below. 6 months earlier, Damien had believed his son needed someone to guide him through a crowded room. He understood now that Noah had been guiding them all along. The boy had taught Ethan that belonging could begin with one small act of kindness, and he had taught Damien that love was not measured by how tightly you protected someone, but by how consistently you stood beside them. The ballroom doors opened behind them, spilling warm music onto the balcony. Noah turned toward it. Ready? Ethan asked. Noah nodded and took one step forward, still holding both their hands. Damien followed. This time, none of them stood alone.